Hello and welcome back to Toby Jones Talks Music, where we do exactly what it says on the tin. I am Toby Jones and we talk music round here, and today we are talking about one of those three bands that are in my holy trinity of bands. One being AC/DC, the second one being Pink Floyd, the third one being Thin Lizzy. And most specifically today we're going to be talking about Black Rose. This video though, a little bit different from some of the videos I've been doing recently. In some recent videos I've been taking deep dives on certain albums or artists, making notes before the video. You'd have seen my notepad in the video a couple of times. But this one's going to be a bit more laid back. I haven't done a video for a few weeks, and today I didn't really want to do a deep dive particularly. I just wanted to have a discussion about the album, almost like I was sitting with someone having dinner or going out for a drink or whatever that may be. And that doesn't involve making notes before you go and sitting there with your notebook. Well, this album was released in such and such and had the single such and such. So today, there are a couple of things I want to get out of this discussion. And firstly, it's how I've came to listen to this album again this week, and how really it's reinforced a love of music and all the good positive things that brings. And then another part of this is this Thin Lizzy's best, greatest album? For me, it's certainly between three. I don't think I'm going to answer that question today because I can't bring myself to provide an answer, because these albums are probably as good as one another. But we'll discuss the idea anyway and come to potentially some sort of conclusion. So because this is completely unscripted, I might go a little bit off tangent. But if I do massively, I might say just stop to myself, or I might edit some things out. But let's get going and start telling the short story about how I came to listen to Black Rose again this week. So Black Rose, one of my favourite Thin Lizzy albums, as I've said before, one I've listened to a lot. I've said in some previous videos that I have a big playlist of tracks in my car on a USB, loaded on a USB, which I listen to and from work. I have about half an hour's commute each way, so probably about an hour of listening to music every day. I normally have that just on a shuffle of, say, nearly 3,000 songs. The problem with that is that you can very easily go from genre to genre. One minute you can be listening to Barbra Streisand, the next minute Motorhead comes on. So to get a happy medium, sometimes I'll switch it to a certain artist, someone I just feel I want to listen to, maybe a certain album sometimes, or sometimes just a particular genre. And the last couple of weeks I've just been listening to easy listening. I've got it down as adult, I had got it down as adult contemporary in the car, but my mind just thought, let's just switch it to easy listening. Fortunately, in my car, you can go by genre if I've set it in iTunes as a genre, and easy listening was one of those. So you've got Andy Williams and Bread and Engelbert Humperdinck and Roger Whittaker and Roy Orbison to a degree in there. There was some Elvis, some Carpenters, which for the mood I was in, absolutely fine. And I probably listened to that like that for maybe a week and a half, so say 7-8 days. And the one day coming on the way home, I thought there was probably about 200 tracks in this playlist, and I'd listened to most of them. I thought, no, I just want to go back to the normal shuffle. That's exactly what I did. And just before I got home, about 10 minutes before I got home on that specific day, a track from this album played, and it might not be one you'd particularly expect to get me going, and that is the penultimate track, With Love. Certainly if you're not a Thin Lizzy fan particularly, it wouldn't be one that you'd probably know, not one of the main tracks on this album. But what was really nice was that it just kind of subconsciously, without me realising, just made me have a grin on my face, because from the start of that track, I was just happy to hear it. It's a track I hadn't heard for a while, and it did just really put a smile on my face, and I thought, that's the music I love. There's certain music that you listen to in certain moods, but I think AC/DC, Pink Floyd, Thin Lizzy, there are probably, I guess, 5 or 6 bands that I would always come back to. There's some music that you can go in and out of, and I don't really like that. But I think generally speaking, every time Thin Lizzy comes on, I find it very difficult to switch it off. But I think really the positivity and all that is that, especially with the cold weather the last couple of weeks, we are coming up to Christmas, which is great. But the cold weather the last couple of weeks, the fact it's chilly when you get up in the morning, it's dark when you get to work, it's dark when you come back from work. It all contributes to having a bit of a general malaise. And just hearing that song got me out of that for 5-10 minutes, and really put a breath of positivity back into my day and evening. So naturally with that, whether it was on the same day or the day after, I can't quite remember, but it it's not a matter of paramount importance. Over dinner, we sometimes play certain albums, and this was the album I did play over dinner on that evening. And what an album it is! You know, I've just talked about With Love, but there's not a weak track on here. I did think that in previous years when I've listened to this, S&M and With Love out of the 9 tracks are the weaker tracks, but I do like those very much now. Even the deeper cuts on here, Toughest Street in Town, Get Out of Here, really, really heavy rocking, and I think that's got something to do with the fact that Gary Moore is in the band at this juncture. I don't know why, but I have got a feeling that at some point I did actually have this picture rather than the front cover that's just the roses about the band members. I did have this as the album cover on iTunes, and personally I do prefer that picture of the band rather than just the rose itself, but that's what we're given, so just for continuity I do have that on my iTunes now, but I did have that picture at one point, and the guys look great. Gary Moore in the band, of course, replacing Brian Robertson. Phil and Gary had worked together a little bit in the previous year on Gary's album Back on the Streets. They did Parisian Walkways, and Gary Moore did a slower version, the intended version, if you believe what Phil says on the Live album. If don't believe a word. But Gary Moore's in the album, and I do think that heaviness is somewhat down to him. And I have to say that this is the last great Thin Lizzy album. If we look at the 2 albums that come after that, and I say 2, I know there were 3, but I'll touch on that quickly in a minute. We've got Chinatown, which came out in 1980, which has got some decent cuts on it. The first track, We Will Be Strong, is good. Chinatown's good. Killer on the Loose is awesome. Genocide's a pretty good track, but some of these tracks, Having a Good Time, Sugar Blues, it's not exactly peak Lizzy stuff. And then the penultimate album, I know Martin Popov is someone who I think he says this is his favourite Lizzy album. Now, again, probably the first 2 tracks, Angel of Death is awesome. I think it's unlike anything that Lizzy have done, so it's unique in that aspect. I like Renegade as well. Hollywood's a good track. There are some good tracks on here, but again, I don't think it's an essential listening. And then I have to say, Thunder and Lightning I can't really get into at all. I like the title track, Cold Sweat's pretty decent, but it's heavy. But this is if you're going to want heavy Lizzy, this is the heavy version of Thin Lizzy that you want. So just a quick rundown of the tracks, because I had alluded to that. You've got Do Anything You Want To, awesome. Toughest Street in Town, just talked about that. S&M is a track that I didn't like at one point, but I've grown into that. Waiting for an Alibi, of course, was a successful single from this, as well as Sarah. Again, no problems with either of those. Talked about Get Out of Here, but you got to give it up before that. It's another awesome track. With Love, and then the title track at the end of the album. I went to see Brian Downey's band, Alive and Dangerous, last September at Northampton. And it wasn't until I saw that group, because I'd never seen any incarnation of Lizzy live before, it wasn't until I saw that live band that I really got the twin guitars thing. And hearing the guitar solo, the back and forth on this track, the guitar solo it just adds another layer to this. It is tremendous. I think, is it my favourite Lizzy song? It's certainly got to be in the top few. So that brings the album to a close excellently. But there are 3 Thin Lizzy albums that I would consider to be in that realm of my favourites. So you've got this album I've talked about. This album goes without saying. Obviously, it's not a studio album, so I don't include that in the mix. But this is probably, the de facto, the definitive Thin Lizzy record. I've talked a little bit about this on another video. Bad Reputation, one that I didn't particularly enjoy, but one that I have got a bit more over the last few months and years. Particularly Killer Without a Cause. I think that's an absolutely fantastic track. Soldier of Fortune as well. But not the best, not in that realm of 3. The other 2 that are in that list are the 2 that were released in 1976. So going in chronological order, of course, you've got Jailbreak, the first of the albums from 76. I have done an in-depth review on this. My only criticism against this album is the track Fight or Fall, which I'm not all that into. Warriors is another track that I think in that review I didn't like particularly, but again, after seeing the Brian Downey band, seeing that twin guitars, that's got me into that track as well. But this is, it's close to a 10 out of 10 album as it comes. And then after listening to Black Rose on the same evening, I listened to the first few tracks on this, Johnny the Fox. And I know there are a few tracks on this that are a bit more folky, and obviously that's what Thin Lizzy did, and on this album as well. Fighting, which came before that, the likes of Fool's Gold, which are really good. But I listened to the first track, Johnny, second track, Rocky, and Massacre. All of them excellent tracks. So in my mind, it's always been between Jailbreak, Johnny the Fox, and Black Rose. My favourite Lizzy album, and this one actually was off the list for a little while. I did hold these two slightly above Black Rose. Now I haven't listened to these three, all together sort of thing in the last week, so it is a bit difficult to get a gauge of not listening to them all together. But they're all just excellent albums in their own right. Again, a Fighting that was 75. That's a real good solid album. Would I put that above Bad Reputation? It's close. But similarly on Fighting as with Bad Reputation, there are a couple of tracks that I'm not as keen on. Whereas, this is what turns me on to Black Rose, the fact that all throughout it is a really, really consistent, great rocking album. Albeit, as I've said, although I do like the tracks S&M and With Love, they are probably weaker than the rest of the stuff on this album. So it is a difficult conversation. I don't think I'm going to answer it today in terms of what my favourite Lizzy album is, because these three are all excellent in their own right. Another album I want to touch on quickly, as I said, after Black Rose, Renegade and Chinatown are decent albums, but nothing really compared to the three that came before them. But so I probably would prefer, out of anything Lizzy related after Black Rose, to listen to Solo in Soho. It caused a bit of a different sound to what appears on Chinatown and Renegade, but still, this is a great album. Phil's first solo album. I've listened to bits of Phil's second solo album. I've never listened to the lot of it because I haven't actually got a physical copy. That's something I do hope to put right, but they are few and far between, the copies of that second album, the Phil Lynott album. But this again is an excellent album, particularly the track he did with Mark Knopfler, I think, King's Call. The single, Dear Miss Lonely Hearts, is a good track. The title track's good. It's all good. It is. It's all good. I wouldn't say it's all great or fantastic, but it is all. It's a consistent album, which turns me on to that rather than these two that we've just discussed, Chinatown and Renegade, because again, both show pockets of brilliance, but not an altogether album of brilliance. And I don't know whether it is difficult. In my mind, I would rank an album based on how it all is. Every track being consistent. But I wonder if there's some merit to the fact that you got 4 tracks which are excellent and 5 tracks not very much. Do you let those 5 tracks pull it down, or the 4 excellent tracks pull it above an album that, say, like Solo in Soho, for instance, is good, but I don't think there's anything fantastic on it. Whereas on Chinatown, I would put Killer on the Loose. Maybe Chinatown itself above any of the tracks on Solo in Soho. It's a difficult conversation because they are slightly different sounds. I think on Renegade, I would only put Angel of Death in that round. But Angel of Death definitely is on my list of greatest Thin Lizzy tracks. When I think about a few of the one-disc compilations I've got, I don't think Angel of Death appears on those, which is a surprise to a degree because I would consider it one of the better Thin Lizzy tracks. But I guess if you're going for a compilation of 18 to 20 tracks, you can't get everything on there. It certainly does appear on the Essential Thin Lizzy free CD set that I've got, but then pretty much everything that was good Lizzy appears on that. So that's all I really wanted to discuss today in particular. The power of how an album I haven't listened to in a little while can get you out of that malaise, particularly this time of year when the temperature's not so great, and on today, even on Super Sunday, supposedly the football's not that brilliant. Liverpool dropped points yesterday. What can you do? You can't win them all, can you? But yeah, I think that's pretty much all I wanted to cover. So a bit of a shorter video today, just a general discussion about Thin Lizzy. I can't leave you with a conclusion of which one of these is the best of the three. I guess because I have waxed lyrical about it and, you know, talked about it this week. This is going to be my favourite album this week of Thin Lizzy, but again, on any given day that would change. I listened to Johnny the Fox probably a couple of months ago, and, you know, then I would say that's my favourite Lizzy album. I last listened to Jailbreak probably in the summer, and I would probably say then that was my favourite Thin Lizzy album. So it's such a difficult thing to do. I did get myself wrapped up a little while ago in making lists of my favourite albums from these artists, but I just couldn't commit to a definitive list because it can change depending on my moods and what's going on. And I thought, well, if it's not going to be definitive, then I can't do it. In my head, I can't put an album ranking out and say that's it, and then in another video 2 weeks down the line say scrub that, forget that, it's something else that's my favourite. So I don't think that's something that I'm going to do, particularly for Thin Lizzy. I think there are other artists that I would probably say a lot more definitively that this is my favourite album, because it is some distance between that and the others. Judas Priest, could I say that about Stay in Class? Probably. It is close between that and Sin After Sin. Just trying to think of other artists. AC/DC, I think I would have to say Back in Black. And Pink Floyd, The Wall, obviously. I've talked about The Wall and Animals in my last video, about Animals, the album. Scorpions, I don't really think I could pick a favourite there either, because there are so many good ones. In terms of Kiss, I talked about in a short I did that probably Rock and Roll Over was my favourite album, but again I couldn't definitively commit to that. So clearly I've got commitment issues in picking the favourite album from all these artists, but I think there's a beauty in that, isn't there? The fact that there isn't just one great album that you hold above the rest. In particular in this situation, there's at least 3 albums that I can listen to and have great fun with, and you know there are others here, not necessarily looking at the Phil Lynott album, but this one is great fun. Bad Reputation for the most part is great fun, and of course when we're not talking about studio albums and considering everything, of course I think most people would agree that this is the holy grail of all things Thin Lizzy. I don't think you've got to watch this video to find that out, and that'd be a surprise. But I hope you enjoyed this little conversation about Thin Lizzy. If you've got any thoughts on what I've discussed, please leave them down in the comments. It'd be great to have a conversation with some of you who are fellow Lizzy fans like myself. But until the next time, thank you for your company. I appreciate you making it this far. There'll be a couple of videos around the end screen that you might find interesting if you want to continue your viewing journey here at Toby Jones Talk Music. But until the next time, thank you for your company. Much appreciated, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye for now.